back in a couple hours. And so I wasn't big enough. I had to grab the bottom of the steering wheel to push the clutch in to pop it into neutral. But those are the things that's how I grew up, just, I guess, exploring new things. But I also bought my first car when I was 13, and I had it running by the time I was 14, so I could drive it to school legally. I had already been driving for some time. I built a go-kart with a motorcycle engine. It would run 80 miles an hour. I had a need for speed. I grew up just, I guess, on the edge, you might say. I also had like 7 cars before I graduated college, and most of them were just faster and faster, just the way I grew up, and I liked mechanical things. I learned how to make things go faster. That was my thing, or a tractor that would blow more smoke. Then I'd feel a lot more comfortable talking about that and tractors than I would all of this. But I grew up in a Christian home and went to church with my, I grew up in a Christian home, went to church where my mom was the Sunday school superintendent. We mowed the lawn, cleaned the church, and I taught Sunday school when I got older. It was nothing for all day Saturday to spend at church getting it ready for Sunday. So I'm thankful for that. It's just how it went. But my mom died when I was 17, a senior in high school. And it was very hard. For me, one of the things that doing CPR in the middle of the night, trying to get an ambulance, and the sirens, it took me a long time to get over that. So I'm a volunteer fireman. So I was 45 before I joined the fire department, and I just getting off a couple weeks ago after 20 years. It was something that God helped me overcome, because every time I heard that, it brought back those memories. And we didn't then really have counseling. You just kind of went on with life. So it was just, I had a 13-year-old sister that kind of took over in mom's role, and Levon will talk more about that. But anyway, I was hard to get along with. I wouldn't let anybody close, and I was very angry inside for a long time. And I had just started dating Levon. In fact, I think we only had one date that we were actually together as a family before she died. So it was something that went through a lot at that time. Levon and I grew up 3.5 miles apart. I hauled hay. We also did custom hay moving, so young age I was backing under big stacks and hauling with tractors, and I hauled them to her dad because he fed some cattle. But we didn't date until I was a senior and she was a junior. We were on and off a few times. We broke up a few times, and it was mostly because I really didn't know who I was or where I was going, but God had a plan for us to be together. Any other girl would have left to never return. I was angry. I was borderline wild, but anyway, she stuck it out. But not for Levon. She has been there and never gave up on God or me, knowing that God is faithful, and how God knew I needed her gifts to fill in the gaps that I don't have. We make a great team. It's something that she definitely, we're somewhat opposites in things, my strengths and weaknesses, but together we make a great team, and we have done life that way.
Okay. Now it's my turn for a little bit. Hello, everyone. My name is Gadeken. I was born October 28th, 1961 in Wakefield, Nebraska. And again, we put some thoughts down because otherwise we might ramble. I grew up on a farm just northwest of Dixon with my parents and my 4 brothers. We were raised in a Christian home and were always in church. We went to the Evangelical Free Church in Concord all the days of my life. Or all the days growing up. As a young girl, at the age of 6, I accepted the Lord as my Savior, and at 16, I was baptized. I grew up with an amazing youth group. The weekly Bible studies and youth events such as camping at Ponca State Park, Christian concerts in Sioux Falls, Bible camps, etc., made a huge impact in my life. I'm so thankful for my parents who were diligent at getting us to church to hear the Word of God. I went to Dixon grade school until 4th grade, then transferred into Laurel Public School. By the time I was a junior, I started dating this guy. Shortly after, his mom had passed away. So heartbreaking for his family. Ron's two older siblings were grown and out of the house, so it was his dad and his younger sister, only 13 years old, who had to pick up the pieces. Ron has told me many times he sure wished he would have been there more to help his sister. That's her in the picture with him there. Now they're very close and they talk every week. That became a very hard time for Ron, and he was struggling to figure out what he really wanted. He broke up with me a few times, and I was ready to be done. But my heart seen so many good things about him that I kept praying for Ron to see that in himself, to see that God was there for him and always would be, that God had a plan for his life. By this time, Ron was in Norfolk at the Tech College. He ended up winning my heart back shortly after that with a dozen roses in my car at school, which was a nice touch. Ron's leadership skills were what I loved about him. He was very mysterious, never letting anyone get too close, which really didn't bother me. After all, I grew up with 4 brothers. Guys can be like that. Early on, I seen the confidence he had with his God-given gifts to fix anything. At a young age, he learned how to plow, plant, disc, etc. His dad needed the help, so he stepped up to the plate. Those years shaped him into a man who will get the job done, a man who knows who is writing his story, a man who is my Superman. Our grandson Hunter and Ron share the same birthday. And that's them there. And so that was really fun to have that in our family, you guys get to celebrate birthdays together. His heart is to be there for his wife, his kids, and his grandkids. That's Christmas picture. And our church family. Go down to the... There, back.
With that one?
There. Ron always, for our...
We didn't have them in the right order.
For our holidays, Ron always shares a Christmas story with the grandkids, and so that's a shot of that. He loves the Lord and has grown so much in his faith over the years that it makes my heart happy. So here's a little bit about myself. I've been a bookkeeper for our business, and I've had other clients over the years, but I'm down to one now. I am blessed to be a wife, mom, and grandma. I love hearing the word grandma. When our children were growing up, I was always helping with Sunday school, Bible school, any church function, etc. Ron and I were youth group sponsors, hosted youth gatherings at our different homes over the years. And I host many family gatherings at our home. I love watching Husker volleyball. And we've been able to go to a few matches. And I enjoy being outside working with my flowers and tomatoes. I make salsa and canned tomatoes, and that's about as far as my gardening goes. I have a strong love for popcorn, Diet Coke, pizza, and wings. I hang my sheets on the line year-round, and ooh, I love that smell.
So I'm going to go up here to a different picture. Sorry, we had kind of changed things up. But anyway, so it was in the 90s when I finally said I couldn't do this anymore on my own. I went to my first Promise Keeper rally in Minneapolis. I had worked almost all night to go. I was so tired that I fell asleep with my head on the seat in front of me almost the whole way. It was my first time experiencing singing with 80,000 men. It was so cool. We were actually outside the stadium and walked in with them singing, and you could hear that for miles. It was really a cool experience. I had heard how and what a man should be. When we got back, it was my first experience of a men's Bible study. That started a change in my heart. Then we were asked to go to a Via de Cristo, which is a weekend that the men go, and then the women go a couple of weeks later. And so it was a time of real reflection. One of the powerful times of that was absolute silence for an entire evening and night. And at that time, there were letters that they were written to you, and it was a time to read and reflect. And it was one of the, probably the first times I had actually stopped, because seemed like I was on the run. At 23, I went on my own in my business, and which I'll talk a little bit later. But so it was always a lot of responsibility trying to pay the bills. So it was always a struggle. But anyway, I said, God, you need to help me. And he did. I had a time that I was asked to read in front of a group. I had always said no. I have a real hard time reading. I found out through our son Grant, when he was in school, he had a form of dyslexia. It's exactly what I had too. That has helped me deal with my reading. I have gotten better. I asked God to help me, and he did. That was the time when it was him and not me trying to do it alone, but with him. And so it was a time that I just really had to let go of that fear, and God helped me through that. So it was a time that really from that moment on, it was like a calling that I knew he would always be there through all of my struggles. And so that was a time that was a change in my life. And then I was baptized in 1996 with our son Grant in the Mascentine Lake in Stanton. It hasn't all been good, but keep working on being more Christ-like all the time. I wish I could have been a better husband and a father in the beginning, but though through God I found that I could break the chain and become a better man. One of the biggest things that I learned through the Promise Keepers was that you don't have to continue down the same road that's broken. You can actually get on a new road, and that was a thing that I had to do. I really am thankful for my parents, and as parents, we all do the best we can, but sometimes we don't do the best that needs to be done. And it was a time that I could change and make a difference. There were so many people at that rally that were in their 60s and 70s that wished they could go back. And I was in my 30s, so I felt, well, I can still make a difference. And so it was a big change for me. So, do we go to, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we're gonna kind of go back to, there was a picture of us leaving our for our honeymoon, and at that time I had a '68 Corvette that was having some either fuel pump issues or whatever, so we took our '74 Vega, which is there, which I didn't know it at the time. I had the keys in it. We get in, we take off, and a good friend of mine had put it on blocks. So it raced the engine and never went anywhere. So that was a thing kind of back then. It was kind of funny. But we took off from there. And in that same car, we took a trip because I was working at a John Deere dealership and decided that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And so we had a friend that we farmed his ground, and he lived in Texas. And so we took a Texas trip, and we thought, well, we'll just do this over a weekend. And come to find out, it's like 17 hours of driving. And we drive, and I look at a job. And I had the job. That wasn't a problem. But it was in the oil fields in Odessa, Texas, which is in the Panhandle and kind of in the middle. But I mean, it was a culture shock for us. It was something that was very different. And we really weren't running away from family or anything to have such a distance. We both laid in bed that night after I had experienced what I'd be doing or the expectations, and we just really didn't feel that was it, but we didn't say no. The next weekend I had another job interview in Stanton, which I had been doing some service calls from John Deere down and working on some equipment. And it we went to that interview. We talked about it. We prayed about it. And we prayed for a specific thing to happen. And it did. And so we said, we're not going to Texas. We're going to stay and go to Stanton, which was a little hard for me, only because my dad actually was born and raised in Stanton. He was born on a farm north of Stanton and went to, actually, Bega is the name of the school, country school, but he went to high school in Stanton. And then he was drafted right out of high school and went to World War II, but settled in Laurel, not to live in Stanton. And but anyway, so it was a door that was open, and we took on the challenge. And at that time, I felt like I was taking on the challenge instead of we were taking the challenge on. So that made it a little bit hard for our marriage, because I always say that, I've been happily married for 40, but actually been married for 43. There were 3 years in there probably total that probably was challenging. So you just don't ever want to give up. So I was in business for 10 or 15 years and had some real challenges financially and customer-wise. So I was done. I would have threw my car keys or the shop keys in the street. Anybody could have picked them up. I said that more than once. So we went to Colorado to pursue a different career. I had an uncle that lived out there, which we had vacationed with. I don't know if there's any pictures, but so we went out there, but God never opened a door. I said that we had prayed about it and really prayed about a door that would open so that we could actually do something different. But he never opened a door. And so we come back, and I did my thing and worked. Within probably less than a year, a business of a person that worked next to me in a shop that had a car shop passed away, and his wife said, "Hey, do you want this building?" And I said, yeah, it would work good kind of for a storage building or whatever. But anyway, I kept it as an auto business for almost 20 years. And that was a challenge that I needed to redirect with new, different clients and a different challenge. And so we took that on, and just recently, we have closed that. I had a son that worked for me for about 10 years and moved, got married, and did other things, which is fine. But I just have not, we kept praying about a mechanic, and it just never happened. So we just felt that that was God's timing and his season that we had. It brought us through a time that we needed. Most of it was with auto. It's a cash flow where you get paid when you're done with the job. When I worked for the farmers, you got paid once or twice a year. So you had to carry a lot of money, which was very difficult at times to manage. We had done the work, we had made the money, but didn't have it in our bank account. So it was a challenge. So that was part of that. But so I've been actually in the fall of '82, I started in Stanton. So been there 42 years. And so that's what I do. I'd much rather talk about the noise in your engine. I get cell phone calls now, and they do a FaceTime, and they do noise, which is mostly static, and can you tell me what's wrong? So I do get that, but
I was just
okay.
looking through.
You want to go?
And during all that time when we were going through those, not sure if we were going to have a business or whatever. Meantime, we're having kids and having family. And so we had 2 little boys at first, and then 9.5 years later, we ended up having our little girl, Hannah. And this is them, our oldest son, Grant, and Andrew's the middle child, then Hannah. And Grant was already in college then. And then, like Ron said, he had been on the volunteer fireman for 20 years now, and I didn't have any real pictures of him in action, but anyhow, One thing about Ron is he will help anybody, and this here is a picture of, I mean, he had to work on that payloader and our little grandson Hunter, and we have taken some time to do a few vacations. When our children were growing up, we went to a lot of, the boys were in shooting sports activities, and we traveled all over the United States. They started in BB gun, and then it was air rifle, and then shotgun. And then once Hannah grew up, then we were traveling to horse competitions. And I had to learn how to pull a trailer and load a horse and do all that. One time I had to end up going by myself up to Minnesota, and I can't remember the name of the place right now, but I'm like, I can't do that. But he's like, yes, you can. That's one thing about Ron. I have learned to be able to do things I never thought I could. So we were busy too through all that, and tried to just teach our kids to be. You can do it. You can do anything you want to do, and so that's taught them to be independent, and they've all got great jobs. This was we're going to talk this next part of our stories. We're going to talk about the house story, and so this house in the background is where we lived for 20 years of our marriage, and it was south of Stanton, and actually I think Ronald is.
You want me to talk about that?
Yeah, talk about the house and how that all came about. So,
as far as this house, it was an acreage which we always wanted. We were living in town, which we rented, and then we always wanted to place on an acreage. Well, this was on 5 acres, and it was a customer of mine that we ended up buying it from, but it hadn't been lived in. It did not look like this when we moved in or was going to move in. It had been not lived in for at least a couple of years, and they had let cattle run up along the house, and it wasn't fenced off and all that kind of a thing. But it was
On the front porch.
yeah,
On the front porch.
they were everywhere, but they weren't in the house. But anyway, this house became a 20-year project. We had bought our business a year and a half after I started there, which I was very young, with a partner, which was the owner's son, and 4.5 years later I bought him out. But in that process of us moving here, there was a basement wall that actually collapsed into the basement, and we had no money. So I learned, I said, I pick up things all the time. The payloader picture was an engine overhaul, and I was delivering it back. So I'd done different things. So I jacked the house up, got a friend to loan me a backhoe, which I hadn't run, and we backhoed the wall out, and then we did an addition, which, looking back, we should have built a new house because we roofed it, we put windows in it, we took the lath and plaster out, we insulated it, wired it, plumbed it, and so it was just the way we did it, so we didn't have to borrow a bunch of money. So
one day when I just was coming back from, I think it was a bridal shower or something, and I come home, and he had decided he was going to rip the chimney out, and it went the 3 stories, didn't put anything over anything, didn't cover nothing. So it was a disaster, to say the least.
and
But
soot goes everywhere.
yeah, so we had a mess, but we got the old chimney out, and yeah,
So in part of that process of when we had it jacked up, she was doing dishes in the bathtub. We had one stool in the basement. We had everything tore out of it, and we still lived in it. We had to live in it. And she had, at that time, I think, the 2 boys. That was part of it. But it was just another way that God showed that, hey, He was with us through the whole thing, and it was just another part of what shaped us. Mm-hmm. So we did move after 20 years, and these are some of the pictures from our front porch, which we can actually see about 23 miles. We can see this. This is a rainstorm that's raining probably in Madison, and it's coming our way. So this is one of the winter sunsets that we have, that we get to enjoy and see what God has made. And in this picture, it may be the easiest one to tell you, but with this clicker mouse, the water, when the flood came in whatever 19, came all the way up to this, the Highway 24 runs right here in front here, and the water and the river is clear back there. But all of this
The
was
highway's right
underwater.
there. It's
Oh, the
out.
highway's here, excuse
Yeah,
me.
there.
Yes, that's the intersection. But this all was water, but the river is actually back here along that tree line. So that gives you some perspective of how bad the flood really was. This is in the summertime where we get to look at the cattle coming up and drink, and I put the tank there for a reason, so I can see them. So this is a what they call an underground home, berm home, whatever. So I always tell people I'm already 6 foot under. But anyway, there's about 6 foot of dirt on the top that insulates. But the thing that you really notice is the quietness, because you have no noise. And also in that flood time, we were privileged to have Pastor Matt and the Strongs were able to stay with us for a short period of time, which was a blessing. We have a picture which we didn't put up, but we all had our blue Solo cup, and it was lined on our counter with your name on it, because when you have, I forget how many, 20 some in your home, it was good. It was a great time that we got to look back. We get to look back on and share.
Are you going to tell the story on the house?
Oh, and the story is another God thing. We live south of town. We had bought a piece of ground, actually just a mile from this house, mile and a half from this house on Highway 24, and we were going to build. We had planted 650 trees, which we took care of, and I took the backhoe and dug a hole because there was no well, and the water table's high enough that we were able to water all those trees and keep them going, and we had a 3 to 5 year plan of building. And the church we were attending during that process had a big building phase, and we had committed money to that, and we felt it was important to do that commitment, so it kept us from building for at least 3 years until that commitment was over with, not knowing that when that 3 years was up, that this property would become for sale. I always wanted to farm. The other acreage was another 5-acre spot. This sat on 100 acres. And it gives me the ability to do some farming. It has some pasture for some cattle, which that's what I wanted to do out of high school, but with the interest rates at 18% when I got out of school, that wasn't a possibility. So I pulled wrenches, and it was something that my grandfather, my mom's dad, which he came here from Germany when he was 16, he was actually in a family that was starving, and he had no choice but to get on the boat. And so he did. He come to America, and he made a life for himself. And he just said that if you're going to farm, you need a trade. Go to school. And he could do carpentry. He could lay blocks. He could do different things that kept him going when it was slow in the farming years. So I went to do the mechanic thing just as a sideline, and it seems like I'm still doing it. So that's what God had for me as a plan. But this property, somebody mentioned something in my shop one day, which there's a lot of things mentioned I won't talk about. But anyway, that this guy that had lived here was somebody that we knew and had talked to, and that his name was Kurt, and you might consider selling or whatever. And I said, I don't know why you'd ever move, and that. So I told Levon, and so Levon, I said, I'm not going to call him. I'll call him. So it called, and so she calls him on the phone and said, Kurt, we're Ron and Levon Gadeken. Yeah, I know you. How you guys doing? And all of that. And she just said, well, we, have a piece of property that you drive by that we're going to build on someday. And she said that we would hate to be in the building process and come to find out that you're going to sell your place. And he was silent because he said he had not told anyone that, yes, in less than a year, they were going to put it for sale. So then we just said we would like to see it. And he goes, you'll be first on the list. And so then time went by. You can probably tell the story better as far as the timeline goes.
That was January, and May, first part of May, I got a call and said, if you want to come see the house, come this morning. Can you be here at 10? Ron was at work. I said, let's go. And so anyway, they ended up, we looked at it. I was not a fan of the house at all because I like a farmhouse. And but I knew the ground. Ron could finally farm after close to 30 years. And so we didn't talk. We had no idea what the price would be, and we both had said, I don't think we'll be able to afford this. Well, we prayed about it and waited, and we got that call again in a month later. And we met with them, and we knew where our dollar amount would be that we could do it, and it was under that. And so I don't have a poker face, and I was just like, it's gonna work. And so anyway, that's been 17 years ago, and Ron finally has gotten to do his farming.
Mm-hmm. So God is just faithful. I mean, patience and waiting on his timing. This is way more than we ever dreamed. That he allowed us to sell our place, sell our land, buy this place with no realtor. It all just kind of fell into place where this was all done just in verbal, okay, and that's how it happened. And so God is so faithful in what he has done, and that was one of the stories that we have. Another part of how God's timing is that when okay, in the meantime, that as far as I know, with the auto business closing, we didn't know how we were going to be able to do it. Mostly financially, and all the things that were involved with that was that when we couldn't find a mechanic, it just became very kind of difficult. Well, God is faithful again, and he one of the things that I did was a lot of haying with my dad when I grew up. We did a lot of custom stacking and hauling hay and all that. And I've put when I first bought the property, the first thing I did was put it to alfalfa so that I could hay, and because it really brought back memories. In fact, I even went back and found a nostalgic windrower that we had, and that's what I used, that I grew up on from 10 years old on, and that's what I used. And so in that process, I was having issues with my back, maybe because I did a lot of those small idiot cubes, they call them. But anyway, also with all the wrenching that I did. But so I had back surgery and a new shoulder put in a year later. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to do the haying with the equipment that I had. So a gentleman said, would you do my hay? I have the windrower, which was an air ride seat, and those kind of things that allowed me to do it. And the tractor that I had, I got a air ride seat also because of the bouncing and all the things you get in a hayfield. And so I have been able to do that for a number of years. And in fact, I just finished last night a big field, which I'm so thankful for. But it was a piece of property that has been in what they call tenure, CRP, which if you don't know what that is, that's left totally natural for wildlife. So what it does, it brings the critters called gophers, and these weren't just regular gophers. They had a strategic plan of building condominiums because they were so big. So it was so rough, but it was so funny but it was, the pheasants they were all looking for a new place to live after we cut this. But it allowed me to do what I like to do in a way that, yes, it makes me sore, but it doesn't hurt me. So that was a good thing that I was able to do. And it's also brought in the income that we were not getting from our auto shop. We didn't know that plan. It's something that God just made happen It's amazing that we just allow him to work, and sometimes, especially Yvonne, will raise an eyebrow or two. What are we doing? But if we pray about it and feel that it's God's leading, we do it. So, and this,
Actually, I was ready to, let's just be done and do something else, but that wasn't what God's plan was. And it was when our son had said they were going to be moving and that shop was going to be closing. I remember being worried. He didn't act like he was, and we tried to find a mechanic, and it didn't work. And then about a year later, this opportunity come up with the custom haying. And so this picture, Ron gets to actually, this is our little 40 acres, part of that property we have. There's, it's 100 acres, but he gets to have cattle on the pasture part and then do his farming. And most of the time it's in hay, but this year it was in the corn. So it's just fun. And it makes him happy. He's happiest there. Through that time when Ron was going through his back surgery, and actually a year later he ended up having shoulder surgery, this verse was very important for kind of you've got to just heal. It was hard for him to sit still and not do anything because he's used to that. Yeah. Well, this is we'll just talk about our kids here and anything else that you had that you...
I guess kind of along the lines of, I just needed to work on my relationships and to be a better person, to set a better example. One of my gifts is the gift of service. I like to help people in any way I can. That's something that God has just given me that I like to do. I have served in the community for, we already talked about that.
Oh, that's okay.
So,
you can say it
and
again.
I've done that. No, that's good. So we can go on to the family if you want to.
Okay. All right. So this is our family. Our oldest son, Grant, and his wife, Sarah, and their kids, Colton, Hunter, and Harper. And then our middle son, Andrew, and his wife, Rachel, and their children now, Rain, Reed, Rivers, and Rockland. And then our little girl, Hannah, and her fiance, Zach Hintz. They just got engaged last weekend. And then our dog, Dakota, who is actually a joy sometimes and not so much a joy. So that's pretty much our story.
I think so.
There's our family at Christmas time last year. It's hard to get a professional family portrait when your kids are scattered all over and they're busy, and so we always take one at Christmas time, and that is our clan. We're up to 15 children now, or 15 of us, and what a blessing. We're so thankful, and that is our story so far. We'll see what else God has to bring.
Yeah.
So any questions you have, things you want to know, if you want to drill down on anything, what you want to ask them. And if they don't ask, then I will ask.
Uh-oh.
But
Please ask.
This is your
It'll
chance.
be tougher.
So early on, his self-description was of high school and so on, kind of a wild card. And you mentioned that at one point, you had this kind of turn point or something. I mean, you were believing in him. I mean, what counsel would you give to the Lavons of today who are having to make a decision about, do I invest in this guy? Do I commit to this guy? Just what went through your brain? And looking back now, how would you counsel someone?
Well, I would say because of at the beginning of who I knew what he had inside of him.
You saw who he could be.
He was a good man. And
it was just packaged poorly.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Nice way to put it.
Yep. And a lot of that, I didn't know what was going on inside of him. Honestly, some of it I just found out when we were putting this together. This was a lot of fun to do. will say he's not he could be a man of few words around me just because he talks to everybody at the shop, and I mean, he's a busy guy. But it was really good hearing his heart through this, and I do believe that his mother's death was one of the turning points where he just really struggled, not knowing what he wanted, and but I would, keep praying and keep finding the good. Everybody, you can find the gold in somebody. Everybody has it, and don't dig for the dirt. We had many times we had a rough times with our relationship, but we had God on our side. That's honestly is what kept us together.
One of the things in our premarital counseling was that we committed to not to give up. And we took that serious. Both of us were very much a people of our word. And sometimes that's all maybe we had at times in our marriage was, I'm not giving up, even though it was rough. But we both grew up, like I said, in the church. We knew we just kind of came from two different backgrounds. I grew up Lutheran, but it was something that we took serious. And one of the other, I thought, was a good thing is that we wrote down 10 things that we really admired about the person we were going to marry. And that isn't, but it really should be in your bedroom, so that you recognize that and look at the positive things, I think is a very important thing. And for us, sometimes it was just relying on God to get us through a tough spot.
And, everybody is different, and I'm not going to make him into who I want him to be. That's God's job, to make him into who God wants him to be. But it took me a long time to figure that out, because I wanted him to be this certain way, or but actually God molds us, and I had to let God do that. Now, looking back, now you can say, boy, this was a good thing. But at the time when we were in it, it wasn't. Going through some of these times where it was hard with the finances, and Ron was not fun to be around, but you still just keep on keeping on. And
appreciate your persevering.
Yeah.
So your next anniversary will be how many years?
44.
44. Okay, well done. So question I've got, when did you come to Northern Heights?
It's been 8 years ago.
8 years? And what brought you
Or
here?
9.
I mean, describe kind of the, the process. What brought you here?
Well, we were, actually, we attended a mission banquet, and Pastor Matt was the speaker that night. And we were, there's kind of a history of, we were in Stanton at the Free Church, and then we moved to Norfolk because our kids were going to Norfolk to high school or to school. And so we wanted to be plugged in with their friends that they had. And so that brought us to Norfolk, and they joined a youth group there and did things. So we wanted to be involved there. And we then were, the pastor there there had been a change in pastors. And so we then thought, well, we'd been in this mission banquet. We really like Matt's perspective and preaching. And so we attended, and we went. At George Avenue is when we first started to come. And it was his teaching ability, and just the word was there. And so then we just started to come.
In what way would you say your journey has been impacted by being at Northern Heights, being with Pastor Matt? And anyway, if you were to say, what did you take from your 8 years here? What did God impart to you in that season? What are a couple things that come to mind?
Well, I would definitely say the preaching, to keep you close to God and the people. I mean, we love our Christian brother and sisters here, and it's just a journey that we've been on. We've been to different churches and have been, involved in all of them and loved all of them. It wasn't that, but we were wanting more. We were wanting more from the biblical perspective and the preaching, and we just weren't feeling like we were getting it there. And then when we heard him, we're like, this guy is from Norfolk, And we had gone to many mission banquets before, and that particular one Matt was preaching at, and that's what we were looking for. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the main thing.
Yeah.
What about for you, Ron? How are you a different man because of something God has been doing or done here during your time at Northern Heights?
It's just maybe through some of the Bible studies, some of the men's events, some of the things that I've been involved in, it seems that I've really liked how it's the Word of God that's most important. And that's what I want to live my life by, not by what is easiest. One of my sayings that my grandmother always gave me was, if there's two roads, there's an easy and a hard road. Take the hard road. Stay humble. And sometimes that's been very true as far as the tough road. But I really like that. What does the Bible say, and how can we best model that example?
Yeah. So speaking of the two roads, sometimes you go through something and you're in, why God? Because this is not what I would have chosen for me. It's a hard thing. But then you get to a certain point where you look back and you see how God was using that to get you to a better place. Does that connect for you? What's something that you look back on where you say, this was tough, but God was using that to build something into us? What comes to mind?
I think you might have something, but I think there's I think a lot of examples of how God is way bigger than myself. I would have never taken on some of the challenges that God gave us without His prompting or answered prayer of making it assuring that this is what we should do. Now, a lot of times He brings you to a point, but as they did in the Jordan, they still had to put their toe in the water before you still have to make your move. Even though God brings you to a point, there's a part that we have to trust Him and go ahead and make the step. And then and He's done that many times of just through our story of how this all came about was. That's one thing that we've always done is prayed about it. There's been things that we were going to do that we didn't because her especially as far as like the women's intuition, that is true because there's some things that I was going to do that I didn't because she said, I really just don't feel that that's what God is calling us to do. So we have not done things. And I think it has been a blessing not to do them.
Yeah. A little sidebar. So I do marriage counseling for couples and so on. I've written a book that I never published, but one of the chapters is on making us decisions. And what I mean by that is it's that a marriage that's going to thrive is one where there are three people on the same page: husband, wife, father. And that's what you're describing is points where, if we don't have an us decision, we don't roll forward. And that's what you're describing. And that I attribute that to being one of the things that has helped you to build a marriage that is still thriving 44 years later. So you were going to say something, Levon.
Well, I feel too, coming to Northern Heights, it was really God was showing us this is where I want you to be because I'm going to need you in these areas or whatever. And then Ron, stepping up to the plate and had since we've gotten here has been in lots of different leadership roles. I myself have not pitched in a whole lot. I I have severe hearing loss, and so it's a struggle for me in settings. This is kind of weird even hearing my voice on this, but so I tend to struggle in even small groups, just hearing what's been said and that kind of thing. And so but I like to be used, and I want to be used and serve the Lord. So I think helping be a part of this transition has been really, really good thing for Ron, especially because he likes a challenge and he likes to get something done. So,
Cool. Any other questions? I got 4 more minutes, so I can keep going, but if you got something you want to ask, if you're saying there's something I want to know, what is that?
Best parenting advice.
Say again?
What's your best parenting advice? Raising 3 kids.
What's your best parenting advice?
well, now that we have, a couple of them are married, and our baby's going to be 27. As they've gotten older, need to. Sometimes you want to give advice that you probably shouldn't, but love them unconditionally, always.
Yeah, and I think it's setting an example. You can talk to the boys. I was a different person than with Hannah because of the year differences, and the boys remember how I was and the change. And I'm pretty confident they would also say that I was very hard to live with. They were not sure where they were, what they did wrong. And one of the problems that I did is I run on empty too long. One of the things that I've learned through some of the men's ministry things is that you can only rob tomorrow's energy so long. And I was running on tomorrow's energy most of the time because I would exhaust myself with nothing left at home. And one of the things that also was something that mentally I did, I don't know if I ever drove the nail in my doorpost, but you carried a credit card with a hole in it. And you left work before you went through the door. Physically, you would put that card so that you remembered that work is over. Now it's your home life. And you need to remember that they haven't experienced what you have all day, nor should they. But you need to save energy to be a good parent because you can't run on empty. And that's one of the things that I did is I exhausted myself in my job rather than saving it for my family. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to make the change of doing.
And he has. He's doing a good job.
What's one thing that you would say, LaVon, you don't realize about this guy? Something that you would say, here's something that I have seen. I'm not sure that you've seen it yet, but this is something that is true of him.
Now, like,
Yeah, I mean, not right now in this moment, but just, something that in this season of life, here's something you have come to see in your husband that you would say, I'm not sure you realize this, but here's something that I see.
Lots of things. I kind of said, I seen it in the beginning of what I seen in there as a leadership, and he is a good leader. I mean, he really is. And he has become a great dad for our adult children and a wonderful grandpa. And actually, he has a sense of humor that is fun at times.
It's fun at times.
Well, yeah, because he won't bring it up. He won't bring that out. It's just random, Like yesterday or the day before, so he'd been gone in the field, and I hate mice. I love birdhouses. I had a birdhouse out on my front porch. The dog was, obviously there was
What kind of
mice.
birdhouse was it?
What?
What kind of birdhouse was it?
It was a church birdhouse. Anyway, ended up, she knocked the thing over. He's not there. Mice come running out of it. Well, she ended up getting them, and leaving him on the front porch. I was not going to touch him. So when he got home at, I don't know, whatever time that, 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, I'm like, you have to get that mouse out of the front porch. I mean, and then he goes, oh, well, they're church mice. I'm just going, yeah, well, they're still not going to stay on my front porch. So, but, yeah, I mean, Ron is a devoted and he's my Superman, I guess. He truly is. I mean, he'll do anything and be there for anybody. I mean, he really will.
Awesome. One last shot. Here's your one chance to ask that question that's been burning in your brain. All right, I'm going to pray. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to get to know this couple who have walked a long path through hard things, but are still earnest in their devotion to you, their dependence on you. We thank you for their example. Thank you for Ron, for Lavon. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you can enjoy some fellowship, and we'll be ready to worship in a bit.